All right. This week we are gonna do the nav service attack and Solaris. Your attacking system is gonna be the Linux system, the virtual machine. And then your target system is going to be your Windows, kind of like what we've done last week, right? The setup is the same. If you had the same setup before, you don't have to configure much at the beginning. But if you don't, then you can download and extract. So I downloaded the 26 one, which is the latest Kali machine, virtual machine version. You can use 25.4, which is the last one. But we are going to still have to update and upgrade each version anyways. So for my virtual machine, the first virtual machine that I booted was the Linux machine. And I went through and changed the RAM setting for it to 8,000, which is 8 gig. And the processor, I increased it to 4. That's recommended if you are attacking, right? Some of the scanning tools, it works better if you give it more RAM. Once you added the RAM and the processor, you want to start the virtual machine. So that's mainly part A. I have logged in to my virtual machine after I have booted it, and I ran the update and upgrade. I'm using the 26.1, so update and upgrade on it is fairly fast on our network. If you're using an older version of the virtual machine, maybe 25.4 or earlier, you might have a little bit. So update and upgrade is probably going to take up to maybe 10-15 minutes if it's an older machine. For me, it only was maybe during break, so less than 10 minutes. Before we configure it to be the internal network, we want to push update and upgrade so we have internet connection. And we should also download the tools that we need. Okay. So if you want to build a home lab with your virtual machine, right, make sure that you have internet connection at first, like what we've seen in this lab. I fixed the last lab because I had it out of order. Um, and install the tools that you need first. Okay. So I did the update and upgrade. Now I'm going to install Sloloris or slow HTTP test, that is. Sorry. That takes a few seconds for it to come down. So we install slow HTTP test. And then we are going to clone. So we're going to download Sloloris from GitHub. So those are the two tools outside of what you already have in Kali Linux. Now, if you use Ubuntu or other Debian release, you will need to install Metasploit, right? Metasploit comes equipped with Kali Linux, which is the first tool that we're going to use to launch the attack. And we'll talk about the framework a little bit. So for Kali Linux, you only need to install two additional tools, which is the slow HTTP test and the slow Loris. Okay? Because Metasploit is already there. So here, you know that you can also, find ways in command prompt to find specific tool using which command. But Metasploit has always been with Kali Linux since day one, right? It was in another version of Linux. So you are going to find it under the application, which is under the dragon icon, and it is in the category of exploitation tools. So if you have never navigated to this, right? We've seen this when we configure network, but Kali Linux break down the tools in the top, in the level of attacks, right? Like if you're doing recon, there's a set of tool for recon, so it comes equipped with specific set of tools. So if you go to, they changed. It's not credential access. I put 8, but you need to find exploitation tool. Let me see if they've used the same. Oh, maybe not. They modified this. So the menu has changed, right? You can also search, probably better to search for Metasploit. I'm sorry. Say it again. Oh, command and control. Yeah, that makes sense. So they call that command and control now, but you can always search Metasploit and it's gonna open up the tool for you. So all you have to do is open up the app and it might prompt you to put in your password, right? And it's gonna build out the database with that. Okay. Thank you. I'll fix that. Command and control. Yeah, they changed the menu in different versions because they add more tools, right, to different areas. Yeah, command and control, which is 12. You can also search for it. Okay, so you know how to open it now, right? Once you open it, it's going to open up the CLI, which is command line interface for the app, and it would look like this. Typically, it has like a little ASCII symbol cow. Different version of it, you would see that it has like either the cow head or the whole cow body. So MSF has always, been like this. There's no UI for it. The way you interface is through console or through CLI, command line interface. And it comes with different the tools for exploitation. So when we say framework, that means that it's a group of tools that you can use for different type of attacks, right? Okay, so at this point, I'm going to minimize this, come back to my terminal, and I'm going to do a shutdown now because I just installed the tools and I know that I can open Metasploit. The reason why I need to shut down is I need to configure the network settings for my virtual machine to be internal. I don't want the school network to be impacted by my traffic for attacks, and you don't want them to block you anyway, so we want to kind of shut it down and set up our internal network, right? So you can also click the power button at the top right and then select shutdown. So shut down now. Okay. So we can do a shutdown now command or click on power button at the top right of your Kali VM desktop, which is like their taskbar, and then select such shutdown. I'm just putting this so if most of you already know how to do this, so. Okay, we shut down every day, every time we do lab. All right, now once you shut down your VM, your Kali virtual machine, you are gonna go ahead and set up the network settings, right? We learned from last week that when we want to build an internal network through the hypervisor, we need to open up settings. So here I am, click on, make sure you select the right virtual machine and then click settings. And now I'm going to go to the network tab on the left. And here we only have one adapter, which is, it's going to refer to that as your network, your NIC. We are going to change the attached to option to internal network. And then for promiscuous mode, we are going to allow all. You can do allow VMs if you're using VMs. I typically select allow all just to, it's like a catch all option, right? Just to be fail proof mostly in the configuration. We don't need to enable serial COM or anything like that. So here it tells you to click on network tab, change the NAT setting to internal network, which we did, right? And then we changed the promiscuous mode to allow all and right beneath that. And then you just click OK. So after I had changed allow all here, right? After I changed to internal network, allow all, I just click OK. And that would set up your virtual machine to be internal. It won't rely on your Windows host system for internet connection. It will be isolated. So at this point, we are going to start the virtual machine after we configure the network. Now, uh, most of the settings, you have to do it before you power it on. So I recommend that you shut it down and change the setting and then reboot so it refreshes the state of your machine. So click Start after you change your network configuration, which is step 23. Now, if I'm not using the virtual machine from last week, right, I would have to reconfigure the static IP. Basically, you have to be on the same network to attack each other, right? Or to launch an attack to the other system. So your attacker has to get into your network typically, right? Or be able to spoof an IP address on your network. That's the goal. That's the concept, is that can you launch an attack externally? But yes, you can, but you have to be part of that network somehow, whether you're spoofing or you are coming in through the firewall with the internet. You have to authenticate somehow and get in, right? You have to assume a system internally. In order to do it externally, you have to bypass the firewall, which typically you have to assume another identity anyway. So the goal is to get on the same network, right? That's what we're doing, is to set up the network addresses, right, on the same segment. So once my virtual machine, Kali Linux virtual machine has started, I'm going to log back in. And then I'm going to configure a static IP address. If you're looking at this IP address, right, those of you who know subnetting, this is a Class C IP address. I explained this last week. And it uses the subnet mask, the default classful subnet mask. This is like the zip code for your system, right? It tells the system what part of the network it belongs to. The .1 here is a router IP. You always need to route to your system, right? If it's coming from outside of your network, right? So you always want to put your default gateway information in, even if you don't use it, right? You need, that's part of the configuration. Okay. So now so here it tells me that I'm disconnected from my host computer. That's okay. So if you don't see this option, see how mine is like circling still, it's not able to figure out, right? You can click on it and you should be able to see wired connection. But what if I can't click on it, right? That happens before. So if you click on the typically it looks like a NIC adapter icon. If you can't click on it, right? If I click on the little circle here, and click on wire connection, it's gonna take me into the advanced network settings. Now, if I click on it and it doesn't respond because it's still trying to think, you can click on the dragon icon, which is the application list, and you can go advanced network configuration, and it's still going to take you there. So the whole goal is to get to your advanced network configuration. So it tells you here that you can click on the dragon icon and search for that, or you can click on your network settings icon, which is on the top right. Okay. Linux have the appropriate UI design because it's how we read text, top to bottom, left to right in English, right? Windows have it in reverse. It's bottom up, left to right. But technically, for most languages, it's left to right, top to bottom. So that's why you see things at the top. All right, so once I did step 24, right, I found my network. So here, click on the dragon icon, search for advanced network configuration. I sound repetitive. I just want to make sure student follow. And then I'm going to click on wired connection. Why wired? Because your virtual machine thinks everything is wired connection, even if you are using your laptop, right? So wire connection, and then you're going to go to the little setting on the bottom, the little wheel right here. You're going to click edit connection. And because we are changing IP address, you are going to go to IPv4 settings. Okay, which is step 25. So once I click on IPv4 settings in advanced network configuration, I'm going to change my method from DHCP, which obtained the IP address from the network, to manual. The reason why we do this is we can put in a static IP address, right? A permanent IP address for our machine. Okay, so once I go here into IPv4, next to method, you're going to click the drop-down menu and select manual. Where it says DHCP, change that to manual. And then here in the address field, you're going to click add on the right, and you're going to type in the given IP address, 192.168.25.11. Then click in the second column, put in the subnet mask, which is following that. We're going to put in 255.255.255.0. This represents 8 bits, 8 bits, and 8 bits, which is a CIDR 24, right? It's a /24, but we know that the subnet mask is like your zip code. This is like your home address, okay, for the system. And then the gateway is like the street that you turn on, right, to go to your home. So the router, the exit that you exit, I should say, to get to your home. So you need to tell it which router that you're using. And it's typically is a .1 at the end for the gateway. Okay, so what you can have multiple manual IP address. We just need one, right? And it has to be unique. See how it's a .11? Your Windows system has to be a .12 or 13. It cannot be a .11. Your host ID cannot be identical because that will be a duplicate and it will not know which is which, right? So the virtual machine for the Linux is a .11. The Windows virtual machine is a .12, just to make it easy. And you can always delete the IP if you're not happy with it and reconfigure. Okay, so once we have it, don't forget to click save, which is the next step, right? And it should update, right? If it doesn't, you can just reboot. So once I have changed my setting, close the setting or the advanced network connection window, open up your terminal again. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see on the video. We're going to do IP space address to check, right? And it took, right? So if it doesn't show 192.168.25.11 and it's still showing the old IP, which is a 10 dot, right? You need to restart. It doesn't have this problem anymore on the later version of Kali Linux. But in the older version, it doesn't always update the state, especially on virtual machines. So reboot, always refresh. Okay, so I checked and my IP is now stored, which is step 30 and 31. Now I'm going to go in and configure my Windows VM. I'm just going to remove the old one so that way I can configure with you. Okay. I remove only, right? You saw the drives when the folder is not there anymore. If you click remove all, it deletes the folder with it. So in the future at home, when you're using this, when you right click and do remove, choose remove only. It doesn't delete your VM file. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and add my Windows, which you can download or you can use the drive, but copy it to the desktop. Don't run it from the external drive because here on these systems, it tends to have input-output issues with USB drives. So copy and paste the virtual machine folder onto your desktop. I'm going to show you. I did that, right? On my desktop, I have a Windows 10 VM clone. So if you downloaded it, make sure you right click and extract it and use the extracted folder. Okay, do not run it from the compressed folder. It will fail. Okay. All right, so I have the Windows 10 VM clone for 27B. And I'm going to go back to my VirtualBox. I click add, and then I'm going to go to my desktop where I copy or extracted the VM. I'm going to find my CS27B Windows 10 VM, open that up, and select the blue file, which is your VBox file. Click open. Don't start it yet. We need to configure the processor, the thing, right? By default, when I created the virtual machine for you, right, it has minimal, it might have a bunch of RAM, right, and processor. So what you want is you want to reduce the RAM. Remember we talk about buffer overflow, right? If you have a minimal server, it will crash sooner. So you can see some result. But if you increase the RAM, it will withstand your denial of service attack. So my students always ask me, oh, I launched the attack and nothing happens. Nothing happens because you have enough buffer. You have enough RAM. You have enough processor. But if you reduce it, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce it to 4,000, right? And the processor, you can keep it quad core. If you want, you can lower it to 2. Just keep in mind that when you reduce the processor to dual core, it's going to be slower, right? Can they run a server that way? Sure. If you buy cheap cloud or free cloud, you're gonna get like at most quad core and 4 gig of RAM, just enough to run your Windows OS. So if we have 4 gig of RAM, that's enough to load your Windows OS. Not very much for the other applications. Okay. All right. So I have on my lab, right? I told you to configure that to, I think it's a later step. Yeah, 4,000 megabyte, which is 4 gig, and you can keep it at 4 core and see how long if it crashed at all, right? And then we are going to also configure the network part. So click on the network tab and then making sure that it is on iNet. So click on the NAT option here and then change that to internal network. And then promiscuous mode allow all. And VirtualBox might already have that for you already if you've done that before. Okay. That's all we need. We don't need to have any kind of COM port or anything like that. Then click OK. You can always check your settings by looking at this page, right? Scroll down and see. And then when we're ready, right? So we configured the network, the RAM, and the processor. You're gonna go ahead and go to the VirtualBox, click start. We just need to start IIS services. So after we change the IP address. So in Windows, we're gonna give it a static IP, a permanent IP address. So server environment, you have to use static IP. You don't want your IP to change because you don't want your client system to be confused, right? One day it's like this, another day it's different IP because DHCP is going to give it different IP. So we want a .12 for our Windows server. It's Windows 10, but you can run web server on any OS. Doesn't have to be a server OS. So we're going to put in the static IP for the Windows system. So after you configure your IP, you check it. So once it's boot, we're going to log in. I believe it's capital CIS. See you later. 27, no exclamation. Maybe not. Yeah, CIS 27 with no exclamation. It's this one. I highlighted it. All right. Once you log into the Windows desktop, right, you can follow the steps. It tells you that you are going to open up your settings. I think on the Windows 10 in later versions and also in 11, right? You don't sometime when you search for things because they categorize it differently. Always good to go to settings if you're not sure. So I'm going to go to settings and open up network and internet settings. You've seen this last week. So here's my Windows virtual machine. Don't get them mixed up, right? We don't want to change you can't change the whole system anyways. So my Windows virtual machine, you can search for settings or you can right click Windows button and go to settings. And in settings, you would see network and internet settings. You're going to click that. You can also do it through control panel. Okay, so settings and then internet network and internet settings. And in the next step, it tells you to go down a little bit further in the page and change adapter options. And you are going to modify the property of your Ethernet. So here I am in internet and network settings. Scroll down and you're going to see change adapter options. There's another way that you can do it is through Ethernet right here, but we're going to click this option right here. And it's going to take you to your adapter or your interface. You're going to right click the Ethernet, go to properties, and you are going to select IPv4, go to properties, right? And you are going to put in the IP address. So I will start over so you can see. We're going to put in 192.168.25 dot. So 192, right? 168.25, and we're going to do a .12 for the host ID. If you click the subnet mask, it pre-fills your classful subnet mask. Now, this might not always be this way, right? If you actually do subnet, it might not be all 255s like that, right? We can use other classes subnet range. But anyway, when you click on it, it pre-fills that out, and then we just need to put in the default gateway. So the first 3 octet is the same because it's a class C. So 192.168.25 and then .1. The router is typically the first one you see on the network, so that's why it's a .1. All the subsequent system will be following with the host ID, like .2, .3, .4. And in this case, our Windows web server will be a .12, right? Our attacking system was a .11. You don't need DNS for now because you don't have a domain server yet. So we're just going to click OK. And close here. Close out your configuration properties windows and your settings window. Open up your command prompt in your virtual machine. So search for CMD, which is going to take you to command prompt. You don't have to run it as administrator. You can just run it as your login user, which is CS27 student. And here we just do an IP config, lowercase. You can do ipconfig space/all, but ipconfig will do. ipconfig is going to give you the IP address for that system. So we see that it is a .12, right? Subnet mask that we put in and a .1 for our gateway. If you don't see the change, if it's still showing a 10 dot, right? Like I said, just reboot after you have manually set your IP, it should take. Okay? All right, so we finished that task 53, 54. So the majority of it is to set it up. Now, next, we're going to turn on our web services if you haven't done that. So the easiest way is to go through Control Panel. Control Panel is the classic way to configure your Windows, right? I tell my Windows administration class and students, it's your best friend. Control Panel will take you everything that settings give you and more. Bye. Thank you, you too. So I can now close command prompt and search for control panel. And in control panel, this is the category view. By default, it is on category view. So what we're going to do is it's always going to be your features and programs, right? It tells you that you are going to click on programs, the applet right here, click programs. And then you're going to see programs and feature. Underneath that, we are going to add a feature. So web services is a feature that you can add to your Windows system. So it tells you that you are going to, on the left side, right, you click Programs Applet and click on Programs and Feature. You are going to select the feature that you're going to turn on. So here we can click, you can also click it directly right here. So if you want, you can open the applet up. But if you see this right underneath that, you should see a link where it says turn Windows feature on or off. So if I click this, it's going to open this up and then I have to click the left, right? That's what my lab step says. But if you don't, you can see under that applet right here, it's going to be a link right beneath it. So you can do it that way too. Multiple ways to get there. So it's going to give you this option window, right? It's going to say, which one do you want to turn on or off? And if you want to turn the web services on, you just click this checkbox. It will include everything in it, right? Windows services for web is IIS Internet Information Services. Once you have that service on, it opens up the port for you, right? And all the components for that feature. So click that checkbox and then click OK. And now my web services is on. So that's how you can start hosting from the system. Let's say that this is on the cloud that I rent with Amazon, right? I would spin up my Windows virtual machine and I would turn on the web services. In Windows Server OS, it's slightly different step, but it is still a feature for the role of the web server. It's similar, but not exactly the same as you would see on the client OS. Okay. All right. So now once I have that turned on and selected and click OK. So I click the checkbox for Internet Information Services. That's important, right? Click OK. Now I'm going to test it. So I'm going to check it by open up my browser. And if you type in the IP address, which I had, right, it remembers because of the cookies. It's going to load the default page like this. Now, can you change this? Yes. It creates a folder called www.h, and then within it, it has a directory similar to Linux. You just need to recreate your index page and put it in that folder and call it index.html, and it's going to land on that, it's going to load the code for it. So right now, it's coded to show this, right, as an index.html, but you can modify it, right, for your company or whatever you need. Okay. Okay, so that's how you host it locally. So put in the URL, the IP address in the URL for your Windows virtual machine with your Edge browser, and it's going to, bless you, it's going to open that up. Now we are going to switch machine, right? So leave it running. That's okay, right? You can leave it running. And then we are going to access Metasploit. So in part C, you are going to use your Kali Linux by U2. And you are going to run first Nmap. The reason why you're going to run Nmap is you need to actively scan your target, which is your Windows machine IP right here, to see what it has. If you don't know about the target, you need to recon, right? We talked about Nmap before. So you are going to run the command in the Kali Linux machine. Put in the password. If everything is configured properly, it should be able to give you the result. But remember that we are doing an aggressive scan for your Windows system. Yeah. For Kelly? CIS, which one are you using? Exclamation point? CIS 27 with exclamation point. Yeah, there's two different versions. Did that work? Maybe that's just timing out because it's number. Yeah, it's with the exclamation. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, depending on which one I created. Okay. Let me rerun that again, huh? I think I have too much space. Okay. So as you run Nmap, right, you should be able to take a screenshot. It's gonna list one port that's open, which is port 80. Why? Because port 80 is used on the Windows virtual machine for this, for IIS, for HTTP, right? When we host information, internet information services, it's going to open up that port for communication, for requests, okay? And then it should show, right? So when you read the result, it should be able to tell you like the services, like internet information services or IIS. And it should tell you the Windows operating system. It will say Windows 10, right? Version number, blah, 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 or non-specific version number, but it should say Windows 10. And it should say one hop. Let me see. Give me a second. Let me ping it. I'm not getting responses from my Windows system. Hold on a second. I gotta make sure that the networking part is I configure, but it's not seeing each other. So if you're getting a long pause, it's possible that there's a disconnect between the virtual machines. So there's maybe a misconfiguration. I might have. So check your IP and subnet. Yeah, so my Linux is responding, but my Windows 10 is not responding to the Linux. Or maybe it's just busy. Yeah, so when you ping, you can. So let's see. It might take a little bit for Nmap to go through. Yeah, I checked. They ping each other fine. On the Linux side, it is a little slow. Yeah. Let me see. If you want to speed it up, you can also just do nmap dash A. Okay. So it takes a few minutes. Just be patient with it. You don't have to do a dash P dash A. You can also do just an overall capital A and then the IP address. That might be a little quicker, so you can omit the P. But what we want to do is we want to really read like which port is open, right? It tells you that port 80 is open for HTTP. Don't just scan and ignore the output, right? Scan and so we can see what's happening. And then it tells you the services, which is the web service IIS there. And it tells you that there is potential risky method like trace, also because I'm also like pinging at the same time. But it tells you the version of the operating system, right? It's 92% match for Windows 10 and 89% match for Windows 11, right? So the signature for the OS is really, we talked about this before when we were fingerprinting OS, right? How can it distinguish it? It's really because OS is designed a specific way, so it's able to identify that it is, high in statistic that is Windows 10, which is correct, right? And the distance from it is 1 hop. That means that it's either on the same network, which is within the same router, right? That's your gateway that you have configured. Or if it's far away, it's going to tell you the number of routers in between, right? How many exit are you from the destination, right? Okay. Um, and then for the trace route, it shows that it traces to one router. Okay, so once you have done the nmap, we are going to do a sudo dash I. That is also going to allow you to elevate your privilege as a root user. You can also do sudo su, right? Either or. Once you are a root user, you are going to call on Metasploit. And the way that you do that, instead of clicking the app, you're going to do MSF console one word, right? And that's going to open up the command line interface within your terminal for Metasploit framework. And whenever you hear the term framework, that will consist of many components like tools, setup tools, and then be able to access that, right? So Metasploit is going to open up. Now, if you open it up from the app, it's going to look similar, right? So here you go. You have Metasploit. And when you know that it is a command line interface is where you see the app, right? The console with the arrow like that. That's when you are inside the app, not the terminal. The terminal would have your user account and your directory. So here we're going to put in the command for Metasploit. And to start it, first you need to initiate auxiliary to be able to scan communication connection ports, right? So we would say use auxiliary scanner is the module that it's going to load, and then we're going to do a port scan, and we're going to look for SYN, which is synchronization, right? We're going to scan that. So run one command at a time. So it's going to load the components that you need for that. And then next thing after you load the basically modules or tools for it, you are going to set your host, your target. So when you do a set our host and an IP address, this IP address section is going to be your target. So right now we're going to set your Windows as target. So it's going to show you that it now set your Windows IP as the target, right? So the step is that you load the tools that you need, right? And you set your target. And then you need to set the ports that you want to attack on that target, right? Um, this is your common port range. So if you're not sure, just do a large range, right? Because some administrator, they would use like the later number in the port range for specific things. But typically you can just set the port range like this. So it tells you that it has set the port. So now, so we set the house, right? Then we set the doors and windows to enter that house for and then now we're going to set verbose. Verbose one just show you, like verbose is text. You want to see the details or not, right? We don't have to make it verbose, but sometimes you want to see the status. So we're going to set so that way we can see some output information. So 1 is true and 0 is false. And then we are going to use, right, the language is Ruby. Oops, I selected the wrong one there. So on your Linux machine, you continue to use the CLI for Metasploit or your MSF. So PID for Ruby 2.7. And once you're ready, this is like the setup, right? The setup for your framework for attack. You're going to click run. So we wait, right? If you don't have time, then you can streamline it by not waiting to cancel it. But I'm going to tell you to see some result, then you wait. Okay. You can go back to Windows and refresh it a couple of times to see. So the whole goal about buffer overflow is that eventually it deplete the resources. So how do you know when your system's about to crash? Browser don't loads anymore. It's not responsive to your clicks and, things like that, right? For a 4 gig, it's probably going to take a little bit of effort to go through. So it will probably withstand like a little bit of an attack. But if you lower the RAM and the processor, like if you give it 2 gigs, which is not the minimum to even load Windows and dual core, of course, it's going to probably like crash in the first launch. Okay. So go to your Windows system on the browser page. You can just refresh it a couple of times and then see if there's any kind of activity. So it shows that there is, right, HTTP session that or activity that's open. As you refresh your browser, it shows port 80 to access your web services. Take a screenshot of that, which port is open. You can put down, obviously, port 80, because and that should be consistent with your Nmap scan results, right? When you look at your virtual machine here, right? I refresh on the Windows side, the IIS page, just click refresh button. So that way it shows what port it's using quicker. Okay, I'm going to speed up the process as we're coming to the end of the session soon. So after I answer the question, take a screenshot. Technically, in the real world, you wait, okay? You wait because they pay you to wait. So you wait for the result. Sometimes the result is not what you want. You launch other attacks. So Here, I'm gonna press Control C to end my attack. Next, I'm gonna load a different type of attack. So if that doesn't work out for you, right, perform a SYN flood. So what you see there is this is just basically, right, to scan your port. It's not officially an attack. It's like running Nmap. So we scan the port and we see the port that's open. Now we're gonna do the denial of service. Okay? We already have the auxiliary, right? We are going to use the auxiliary, but we're going to load the denial of service module and we're going to perform a TCP SYN flood. So Metasploit have many modules. You can perform many different attacks and exploitation, hence the name Metasploit, right? For other things. You just need to load the right module for your attack. So I'm going to go ahead and load the auxiliary by, and you would see that in the path, right? Make sure that you're in the right path for your tools. So we're going to do a SYN flood, right? And we're going to do a show options. So show options, it tells you that you have a target, right? You can do, oops. If you do show options, it would have like the type of module options. You can set your host, you can set ports, you know, sometime yes or no. Look at the output, right? So take a screenshot. I wanted to know that you know how to look at your options before you start setting it. What is your current R port? My R port is 80. That's the port that we're going to use, right? 80 for HTTP. How many seconds before it timeout? 500 is the value. You can calculate that out to minutes if you want, but 500 seconds, right? You see that. So to see the existing setting already, right? For this particular module, you can say show options. Options are, you know, configured options inside your module. Okay. If you're happy with what it has, right, it has the port range, then you are going to set your host, making sure that you set your host. Now, hosts as in one, more than one, you can have a number of hosts, but in this case, we only have one, right? But you do have options to set range. So it set the target for you there. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did before, set verbose 1. I wanted to see the details of my target. So you want to set that true. You don't have to, right? If you want to not see all the attacks, you can keep it. And then when we're ready, instead of doing run, you can do exploit. So you want to check, go on the Windows side, refresh, right? You can also reopen your browser and see if it loads. So buffer overflow takes time, right? So here you're going to put in the 192. And then eventually, right, it's going to be slower to load, right, as the attack continues. So 4 gig of RAM, it's still going to load. 2 gig of RAM, it will not load, right? So did the page load? Yes, it did for me. Why? Because there's still resources, right? You have 4,000 megabyte, which is 4 gig of RAM. So it just need a a certain amount to be able to load. And this file is very minimal, right? Your index file, it's still going to load. It converts that because the data size is very small. But if you have a very heavy duty web application interface, right, there's a lot of components to your web and it's more data. Like you're thinking about like videos and things like that on the actual page. Of course it's not going to load because there's no enough RAM for it, right? So you have to think about like the content of your web server. Would that be adequate with the existing resources that you have? So if you only have like a certain number of amount of RAM, then eventually you're going to deplete that with denial of service attack. Then it won't load, right? So yeah, to answer that question, yes, it's going to load because there's still enough RAM for me to run the OS and to load some application, right? Because Windows typically need about 3.94 gig, and then you set it for 4 gigs, so you have a little bit left. But eventually, if you do distributed denial of service attack, it's not going to load. Okay? So I want you to understand that. That's important to know. All right. So when we're ready, right, it keeps doing the sin flood until you tell it to stop. I love Linux that like it's highly controllable, where Windows, they're gonna limit you to certain things. All right, we're gonna stop this attack. We're gonna move on to other things, right? To the next step so we can proceed. I want to show you that you can. Which one are you doing? The Nmap part?
No, I'm on the Metasploit console
Okay, for which one?
from Set 64.
When you did the run?
Yeah.
Just take a screenshot. Does it show the port? It says port 80 or H.
No. No, it doesn't.
It doesn't show TCP open here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If not, just go on the Windows side and reload the page. It should be able to pick it up faster.
Okay.
Yeah, it's direct. It's on the same subnets. Yeah. So just answer the question and move on. Control C. But in the real world, I'm going to tell you, wait more than 10 minutes on a real server, right? You're going to wait because they have security appliance in place. You got to make sure you bypass that too. Sometimes it blocks you. You have to find other ways to get in. So this industry is about waiting. So be patient with it. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So for the sake of the lab, write down your information and then move on to the next step. Okay? It's just a scanner, that portion. It's not attack yet. Okay. I'm going to proceed so I can get stuff done so that way you can move on. All right. I answered the question for 70, right? 4 gig of RAM. It's still gonna load. If you want to see it not loading, right? Shut down your virtual machine, lower the RAM, and you would see like 3 gig. Okay? All right. Control C. And then what we're gonna do is we are going to attempt another form of attack. It's still a denial of service attack, but it's gonna focus on, right? An additional component. It's going to focus on the HTTP component. So we are going to set up the module, the tools that we need. So on the Linux side, right, I press Control C. Now in the Metasploit, I'm going to use a different module from the auxiliary and denial of service. And then I'm going to set my target. So it's the same step at the beginning, right? Just different tools. Once I have the target set up, I wanted to show some status. So I'm going to set my verbose mode. And then the keyword is exploit. So you just set the tool. You can scanner, you type run, right? Attacks, you do exploit. On the Windows side, right? Try to refresh. So here, you come back to here, right? It tells you that it has a page, a welcome page that it does load 400. I'm sorry, a welcome PNG. It's safe, right? So it pulls some content, probably not vulnerable, will not do denial of service attack. Because by default, Windows OS have Windows firewall. Okay, so you can also, make your system more vulnerable when you wanted to see if how vulnerable is it. You can lower the security on it. You can test and then you can increase the security and test again, right? So it tells you that it's not vulnerable and it will not attempt the denial of service attack. It did do the scan, right? It did execute the module. So using this tool, right, we want to probably run it first to see how weak is the target, right? Instead of attempting all the other stuff first. So that's why I wanted to show you that. Um, Now, when you're done with that part, move on to D. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of Metasploit. You can type exit and it's going to take you back to your terminal. Solaris is fairly easy. You're going to run Python with it. And it tells you that there's options for you to use this to be able, take care, to generate HTTP traffic. So it's going to submit requests for connection and you can do it with hundreds of requests. We talked about that today, right? And then for slow HTTP tests, we can do an application analysis. Remember, we talked about network-based and application-based. So slow HTTP test is a tool to use to test at application layer for denial of service attack. So step 75, I'm going to run Python with my Solaris. Remember, we downloaded and installed that earlier. Oh, Python 3 can't open the file. Oh, I'm sorry. You have to come back to the Kali user. You can close the terminal and then reopen another one. Remember that we download and install as Kali user, not root user, so it will not. So I said open another terminal. So make sure you check 74. Open another terminal. And then we're going to do cd slow loris. And then we are going to run Python 3 with it. So make sure you go into the directory. So follow the steps accordingly. So it tells you that it is attacking the Windows system with 500 sockets. So whenever that you establish connection, you connect to the port. Ports are like doors and windows, but the way to the doors and windows is a socket, right? It is a logical concept in that how it established that connection. So sockets are established for connectivity purposes. Okay, so you can see it's sending that. So by default, it's going to send 500. Okay, you can modify this tool to make it more or less. You can use it as an API also. You can write a Python script and incorporate the API with it. It's nice. I think I did this in my 30C class for Python. So it shows you the sockets that it created for the attack, 500, right? And it's going to keep it alive. So in the header, it's going to tag that. It's keeping alive so the connection continues. So we're going to open up browser now to see if our server is failing or not. So you're going to type in the IP address for the Windows, the target system. And it's still loading, so it's still good, right? The page does load. That means that we still have enough resource to withstand this form of attack. And then over time, it would be slower, perhaps, when it starts to run out of resources. Okay? Now, why is the page loading? Well, you still have enough processors to handle the request and RAM, right? Then you are going to go to the next one. So if you want to proceed from here, right, you want to, so if you look at the result, first it's going to do 300, then it's going to do, sometime, I'm sorry, 500, then it's going to do 324, 342. Sometime it's going to reduce that, right, as your system would have sockets to handle different requests there. All right. We can stop this attack by pressing Control C. And then if you want to test it in a different way, you can make it count 500. You can have it output to a file, right? You can set your target. You are only going to look at the status, 200, the successful status. And we want to do it in a range. So this is going to perform an attack with criteria. So I put down like the details that you see there with your options in that command. Okay, so you know what type of command you're running. All right. So we're going to test it with 500. You can also change this to higher or lower. And then it listed some of the options. So take a screenshot. Like I said, we will mostly have to wait for some of these. So it's connected at 500. Everything is successful, right? Everything is still connecting. Service is available, yes, right? And how long it took for you to obtain the header information. No proxy, right? If you have a proxy for your server, for your target server, it would say that there. So press Control C. Let's do another one. So it puts this into file for you. So you can run this and then go back and check it later, right? Next, we're going to do another command. This is going to look at the body mode of your target, okay? Which is your web content. And it's fairly fast for that one too. Okay? So it gives you the body statistic information. It's gonna give you the status that's successful there. To open the information, you can go to the file, right? How do I get here? You can go to the open folder. And it's under Solaris. Bye, you too. Take care. The output file, right? Your CSV file is here, right? There's two because we ran two command. And then the stat, if you want to open it, like the HTML file, which is open through browser, right? You can open it up. And sometimes it doesn't load everything because it's still running. Or if it's finished, sometimes it doesn't have everything there, but you can also read your CSV file. But I wanted to show you where you can find it. It's under that Solaris folder because that's the path that you're in. Okay. So there you go. Take a screenshot of your output here. It shows you where to find your report, and then you can answer these questions. So now you know how to do denial of service attack with Linux and set up your target. Cool, right? Not everybody can do this, you know. You should be proud of yourself. Even if they took this class online, I'm going to keep that on record. So,